I have a younger sister, Sophie Parker. For as long as I can remember, Sophie has carried resentment like it was a birthright. To her, I didn't just guide her. I stole something sacred, her youth, her freedom, her right to be messy, uncertain, and human without being measured against the Parker family's spotless standard. She says I forced her onto the track I thought was right, that I shoved a finance degree into her hands the way our parents shove heirlooms into a safe, that I handed her a stable life, a respectable future, and told her to be grateful for the weight of it. And when that weight crushed her, when her nights turned sleepless and her breath turned sharp with panic, she pinned every trembling spiral on me like I was the one who wrote her fate in ink she couldn't erase. I used to believe time would soften her, that maturity would translate my choices into love. That one day she'd look back and finally understand I was trying to protect her. I was wrong. The night everything broke, our family hosted a simple dinner, no photographers, no headlines, just a quiet suburban house with warm yellow lighting, forks tapping plates, red wine turning in crystal like slow, expensive blood. But it wasn't a normal night for me. That morning, my company had gone public. I'd stood in front of the NASDAQ screen, watching the numbers crawl across the giant wall, listening to the opening bell ring like metal striking destiny. For weeks, I'd been living on caffeine and adrenaline, telling myself the pressure was worth it because it would buy peace. Tonight, I thought, I get to come home. I'll hug Mum and Dad. I'll smile at Sophie. I'll say, from now on, we can finally live like a normal family. I even had a plan. A big condo in downtown Chicago. Enough rooms for everyone. No more commuting for my parents. A fresh start for Sophie. Whatever she wanted, whatever she chose, with me behind her like a safety net. I imagined myself catching her if she fell. I was painfully naive. When I raised my glass to toast, my parents' eyes didn't stay on me. Richard and Linda Parker smiled. They congratulated me. They did all the right things, but their attention kept drifting, flicking, checking, returning to Sophie the way people keep looking at an open flame, afraid it might spread. Their happiness for me always came with a strange anxiety, like they were terrified my success would leave Sophie stranded in my shadow. And then Sophie stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor like a warning. She flipped the entire spread. Plates exploded, silverware clattered, sauce splattered across the white tablecloth, blooming like a stain that would never wash out, no matter how hard you scrubbed. "I don't want to live with her!" she screamed, voice cracking like glass under pressure. "Do you have any idea how miserable my life has been because of her?" My mind lagged behind the chaos. I couldn't even locate the sin she was accusing me of. I was still holding my wine glass like an idiot, still trying to process the sound of porcelain dying. Then Sophie's hand shot to the center of the table, the fruit knife. Steel flashed under the warm light, and she came straight for me. "Do you know how much I suffered in school?" she shouted, eyes wild, tears bright with rage. "How humiliating it was. I never wanted finance. Who forced me into that major? You did. You turned my life into a tragedy." The blade drove into my stomach with a sick certainty, like a stamp pressed onto paper. Air tore out of my lungs. A chair crashed somewhere. I heard my mother scream, but she wasn't calling my name. "Sophie! Oh my God! Sophie! What are you doing?" I hit the cold wood floor hard. Hot blood poured through my shirt, spreading into a dark pool that felt unreal, like something staged for a movie. Instinct yanked me forward. I tried to push myself up, tried to crawl toward my parents with the key. Desperate reflex of a child who still believes that if she can just reach them, they'll save her. But their eyes didn't land on me. They rushed to Sophie. Sophie, trembling. Sophie, sobbing. Sophie, holding the knife like a fragile confession. My mother patted her back. her voice softening into the tone she used when we were little, when a scraped knee meant the end of the world. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "I didn't realize you were carrying all of that." My father gripped Sophie's shoulders, panicked and coaxing in the same breath. "Calm down, sweetheart, I'm here." And I was the one bleeding out, in my own house, at my own dinner, my belly torn open, my heart going cold, heavy as a stone sinking to the bottom of a lake. Through the ringing in my skull, I could still hear Sophie's sobs, one sentence repeating, drilling into me like a curse. "I don't even blame her. She just went too far. I couldn't take it anymore, so I did it." "It's okay," my mother soothed, as if Sophie had shattered a wine glass instead of a life. "Feeling guilty is good, my poor baby." They held each other tight and forgot that right beneath their feet, I was dying. The last thing I tried to do in that life was open my mouth and say one word, "Mum." But all that came out was broken air. I wanted to ask one question, just one. What did I do wrong? I had studied career guides. I had spoken to professionals. I had calculated the safest path for Sophie, like a risk assessment. I paid for private school. I curated her environment. I even arranged a cushy job for her at my company. Good pay, good title, no struggle. And in return, I got a knife. And the look of parents who had never truly looked at me. When I opened my eyes again, it wasn't the warm yellow glow of a dinner table. It was bright white sunlight spilling through the kitchen curtains, the smell of fresh coffee, the soft rustle of paper. On the table sat a laptop open to the Common App, a stack of college brochures, and a printed list of majors, highlighted, annotated, neat as a trap. My heart hammered like it had been ripped out and shoved back in. Across from me was Sophie, younger, thinner, her anger still sharp but not yet rotten with years. She smacked my hand, impatient as ever, like my hesitation was an insult. "Evelyn," she snapped through clenched teeth, "I'm asking you, what major should I pick?" I froze, and then I understood. I was back on the day she submitted her college applications. The day I once called helping, the day I now recognized as the first crack in the foundation. In my last life, my mother had knocked on my door with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling voice. "Talk to your sister." She watched a bunch of videos online and now she's dead set on archaeology. That major is brutal. She's so delicate. How is she supposed to handle it? And I played the perfect big sister. I broke it down logically. I drew her future in straight lines. I gave her the best option by Parker standards. Finance, impressive, employable, safe enough to hold your head up at family gatherings. I thought I was saving her. Turns out I was laying one more brick on the pedestal Sophie would later climb so she could stand above me with pure venom. Now, staring at her across the table, watching her impatience sharpen into fury because I wasn't answering fast enough, I felt something inside me go quiet, a switch flipping, a lesson burned into bone, because this time I wasn't here to save Sophie, I was here to survive her. "If you don't answer," Sophie lifted her chin, voice sharpened into that familiar threat, "I'm going downstairs and telling Mum and Dad, right now." That sentence was an old lock. In my last life, it clicked shut around my throat every time. Family, responsibility, the unspoken rule that if Sophie made a scene, our parents would turn their disappointment toward me, the convenient target, the older sister, the one who should have known better, the one who should have prevented this, the one who should have carried it. I stared at Sophie's wrist, at the small hand twitching like a trigger, ready to run, ready to cry, ready to tattle, and watch the world tilt in her favour, like it always did. I reached out and grabbed her. Sophie yelped, stumbling back a step, eyes blazing. "What's your problem?" My pulse roared in my ears, not the panicked rushing of a trapped animal, but the steady surge of a river changing course. I let go slowly, as if I were releasing something I'd been holding for years. Stop running to Mum and Dad over everything, I said. My voice was so calm it startled even me. Sophie blinked. For a moment, she looked like she didn't recognize me without the pleading, the bargaining, the frantic softness that used to wrap around her tantrums like a blanket. I placed my palm on the brochures and slid them toward her. This is your life, I said. So you're the one who gets to decide. For a heartbeat, her eyes lit up. Real excitement, pure and bright. Then she crushed it under a dismissive scoff, like she'd always been entitled to this freedom. Finally, she muttered, curling her lip. Something I can actually listen to. And then she spun on her heel and stormed out. I watched her go, already picturing what she'd do next. March straight into our parents' room. Announce I'd given in, brag that I'd learned my place. Reframe my boundary as her victory. A laugh rose in my chest, cold, unfamiliar, sharp enough to scare me. In this life, I wasn't rolling out the red carpet for Sophie Parker anymore. I wanted to see what happened when I wasn't her safety net, when I wasn't the post she leaned on while she cried and kicked me at the same time. I wanted to see what Sophie looked like when she had to carry her own choices like a real human being, just like I remembered. The knock came soon after. My mother, Linda, stood outside my door with red eyes and a worried mouth, like the entire family was about to collapse over one checkbox on an application. Evelyn, she said softly, talk to your sister. She's been watching TikTok and now she's insisting on archaeology. That major is hard. She won't be able to handle it. I looked at her. In my last life, those eyes would have melted me on the spot. I would have swallowed my own needs and thought, fine, I'll carry a little more. We're family. I'm the strong one. I can take it. And I carried it all the way to my grave. This time I took my mother's hand, not like a daughter begging for approval, but like someone steadying another person clinging to an old, poisonous habit. Mum, I said, slow and clear, placing each word where she couldn't dodge it. Sophie's grown. We don't need to run her life for her anymore. Linda hesitated, her gaze flicking toward Sophie's room, as if saying the wrong thing might set a bomb off. But archaeology, I smiled, not the tight, obedient smile of the big sister who always caves, the smile of someone waking up. She's an adult, I said. You should practice letting go too. Stop stressing yourself out. Then I walked her back into the hallway, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing with my own lungs. This life, I was living for me, and Sophie, would have to live with the life she chose. But old patterns don't die quietly. They scratch, they plead, they dress themselves up as love. Evelyn, Linda sighed later, wearing that conflicted face that always meant she wanted something without admitting it. I really didn't want to bother you, but Sophie is your only sister. She's in trouble, and you're the only one who can save her. There it was, the hook, the leash. I let her talk, and the truth spilled out in broken pieces. Sophie had been skipping classes, ignoring assignments, blowing off exams like consequences were for other people. The school had sent warnings. If it continued, she'd be expelled. My parents were panicking. Sophie didn't care. She hated school the way you hate handcuffs. And somewhere along the way, someone helpful whispered that these problems could disappear if you paid a support fee, a tidy euphemism, a polite little bribe dressed in paperwork. And the person they thought of course, was me, because I had money, because I always found a way, because I was the family wallet with a heartbeat. As my mother spoke, an old memory snapped open like someone ripping a bandage off a wound. In my last life, I missed my college entrance exam because of appendicitis. I begged to try again the next year, and back then, my mother took my hand, eyes wet, voice tender enough to fool a starving girl into thinking it was love. Evelyn, she said, raising 2 kids is a lot. Sophie's about to start elementary school. We need a house near her school. Could you drop out and work for a while? Help the family through this rough patch? I said yes, because for the first time, I saw softness in her eyes, even though I knew we weren't truly broke. So I got thrown into the real world, waiting tables, cleaning, retail, anything that paid. And then, piece by piece, I built a staffing agency helping immigrants find work, living on commissions, sweat, and sleepless nights. When I finally had money, I didn't buy myself freedom. I bought my family comfort, a house near Sophie's school, a car for my parents, every expense covered. I raised my little sister the way you raise a child, and in the end, I died by her knife. Lying on the floor, waiting for my breath to run out, I still heard her blaming me, still shaping my love into her villain story. Thinking of that, I looked at Linda now, throat tightening, but I kept my voice steady as if I'd practiced it in another lifetime. "Mum," I said, "I can't." Then, like cutting into my own flesh and refusing to flinch, I kept going. "My company's been in trouble lately. I threw everything I had into saving it. I don't have anything left." I stared straight at her. My eyes were wet, but not because I wanted comfort, because I wanted her to see. I can fall too. "I've never asked you for anything," I said, "but this time, could you help me?" Linda's gaze dropped. Silence widened between us. She avoided my eyes the way people avoid a debt they don't want to pay. In the end, the money still got paid, just not by me. My parents drained their savings, clenched their teeth, and bought Sophie one more chance. They traded their last dollars for a stamped piece of paper that said she was allowed to stay. But even though Sophie had chosen archaeology herself this time, she didn't suddenly become disciplined. She still skipped class, still missed exams, still treated her future like something other people were supposed to fix. Her classmates kept their distance. In the dorm, she shrank into herself like a shadow. Roommates whispered. Professors stopped reminding her. Sophie wanted to drop out. My parents refused. They kept paying fees, kept bowing their heads, kept turning themselves into beggars for a daughter who wouldn't even look back. Eventually, Sophie walked away with a diploma. A diploma bought with money, tears, and compromises my parents had never been willing to make for me. After graduation, they rushed to pull strings and secure her a stable job. Everything arranged, everything polished, just waiting for the background check to clear. When I heard that, I only let out a dry little laugh, because I knew something they didn't. And for once, I wasn't going to warn them. With a diploma from one of those fancy-sounding schools, was Sophie really going to survive a background check? She didn't, Sophie. Worked exactly 1 month. For that entire month, my parents floated like they'd finally won something they could brag about without flinching. They told the neighbours. They told relatives. They told anyone within reach of their pride. "My youngest is amazing, so young and already in a big company. Everyone says she's impressive. She's definitely going to be successful." Their joy barely had time to settle into the furniture before reality kicked the door in. Sophie got fired. The reason was clean, cold, and impossible to scream away. HR ran her school through their system. It didn't show up. They checked again. Still nothing. They dug deeper, the way companies do when the story doesn't match the paperwork, and then it surfaced. The school Sophie had graduated from wasn't what it pretended to be. A fake affiliate, a flagged institution tied to admissions scams, a polished name, a real-looking website, a diploma that might as well have been printed on tissue paper. I expected satisfaction to bloom in my chest. I expected to feel like fate had finally balanced the scales. Instead, I felt empty. Because Sophie's tragedy didn't begin with a fake school. It began with a habit, my family's habit, the habit of calling me to fix everything, the habit of using me as a cushion, the habit of loving Sophie by sacrificing me. And the moment that habit met disaster, I knew what came next. They would call again, like always, except for one thing. in this life? I wasn't going to answer. My mother didn't believe in not answering. Linda stormed into the building where Sophie had just been fired and turned the lobby into a stage. Tears, rage, accusations. A hurricane with a handbag. "What did you just say?" She slammed her palm on the reception counter, voice trembling with furious disbelief. "My daughter studied for 4 years. How could it be fake? Someone set her up. You're trying to steal her position, aren't you?" She planted herself in front of HR like a shield, like if she stood there long enough, the truth would get tired and leave. But then Sophie shoved her way through the crowd. Her eyes were bloodshot, her lips were paper white. Her throat looked raw, like she'd been screaming at the ceiling for days. And she snapped, sharp, cold, cutting. "Mum," she hissed, "isn't this humiliating enough? I got fired, so what? It's not a big deal." Then she covered her face and ran out. Linda froze in the lobby like a child who'd broken something precious and didn't know how to pick up the pieces without getting cut. Someone filmed it. Of course they did. A phone held up. 30 seconds of chaos. A vicious caption. Then it flew. TikTok, X, local groups, neighborhood pages, until my family became a small-town spectacle. The internet doesn't go easy. They shredded what was left of my mother's pride with words like knives, Karen meltdown, stage mum, raised a bachum, liar. People who had never met Linda Parker suddenly knew exactly who she was, exactly what she deserved. I watched and still didn't feel satisfied. I just felt familiar, because in my last life, whenever something happened, the first person they thought of was me. But this time, something strange happened. They went quiet. For one whole evening, my phone didn't ring with my parents' panic. No frantic texts. No guilt-laced voicemails. No, "Evelyn, please." It unsettled me. I didn't even have time to figure out why, because the next morning I walked into my office and felt the atmosphere slip half a beat off. People looked away too quickly. Conversations died mid-syllable. Employees lowered their heads like my presence had become a risk. In the hallway, they drifted away from me like birds sensing a gunshot. Before I could ask what was going on, my assistant Mia approached. Face pale, holding her phone with both hands like it was hot enough to burn. "Ms. Parker," her voice trembled. Is this your sister?" On the screen was Sophie, pale, swollen eyes, mascara streaking down her cheeks like she'd been crying since the beginning of the world. She was live streaming, her voice cracked, fragile enough to pull sympathy out of strangers like a magnet pulling nails. I tried so hard for 4 years." Sophie sobbed into the camera, staring into the lens like she was staring into thousands of people's pity. "And then, when I finally started working, I found out my degree isn't recognised. I was so shocked I almost collapsed." She wiped her tears, bit her lip, and then, right then, she cast the hook. "My mum was just worried, so she went to the company to argue. Please don't blame my mum." A pause, perfectly timed, a sigh like she was being fair. "That school," she said softly, "my older sister picked it for me." The room didn't move, but something inside me went cold and hard. Sophie kept going, smooth as silk and deadly as a wire. "She's a businesswoman, she has connections. My family trusted her completely. Maybe she didn't know it was a bad school." Then she lifted her eyes. Tears slid down at exactly the right moment. Her voice turned gentle, sugar coating a blade. "But it's fine. I don't blame her." And that sentence, "I don't blame her," turned me into someone who deserved a guilty verdict. The comments exploded like dry grass catching fire. "What kind of sister is that? Evil." She knew it was fake and still sent her sister there to ruin her life. Angel outside, rotten inside. Someone teach this sister a lesson. I'll pay. My company address appeared, the hotline number, emails, my headshot from the website. Someone dragged my LinkedIn photo out like a trophy, circled my face like I was a criminal. Before lunchtime, trash was thrown at the front gate. Funeral wreaths arrived like a sick joke. Someone stood under my company sign and screamed at it like I was their sworn enemy. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Hate messages, anonymous calls, voice notes full of shouting. Someone photoshopped my picture into a black and white memorial portrait and stamped RIP on it like it was funny. And the most coincidental part, my personal number, leaked right there on Sophie's live stream. She teared up and whispered, "Please don't harass my sister." But she didn't blur it, didn't cut it, didn't delete it. She poured gasoline, then stood back with wet eyelashes and watched the fire climb. For a moment, I almost thought I was going to drown until someone dug up Sophie's transcript. Terrible grades, absences stacked like corpses, missed exams, professor's notes, absent, no show, missing exam. Public opinion wavered. Her sister forced her to study archaeology, but she didn't go to class. So whose fault is that? Right when the tide began to turn, my parents appeared. They went live on another stream, not to clarify, not to apologize, but to hammer the final nail into my reputation. Linda cried, eyes red, voice shaking like she was auditioning for a family tragedy. "We failed Evelyn," she said. "We didn't take care of her properly when she was little." My father sat beside her, voice low and heavy. "We tried to make it up to her." Then Linda sighed and dropped the killing line like tossing a knife into a crowd. "But no matter how much we tried, she never forgave us. Maybe because she hates us. She got revenge by destroying Sophie's life. Just one sentence, and I was sealed as the evil sister. No one cared about the transcript anymore. No one asked why Sophie skipped class. Every spear swung back toward me, sharp and shining like a swarm of needles. Partners cancelled meetings. Investors called in tight, urgent voices. Deals froze mid-negotiation. Shareholders panicked. Employees started whispering about whether they'd be dragged down with me. Inside my office, people walked softer, spoke lower, like one loud sound might make the mob outside bite off another piece. I stood there watching my parents perform on the screen, and a memory surfaced like a bruise you forgot you had. Sophie at 5 years old, her small face twisted with pure hatred as she looked at me, the abandoned older sister who to her was taking up space that should have been hers. That day, Sophie fell down the stairs on purpose. She clung to my mother's leg, crying like she'd been pushed, and my mother's eyes turned toward me, not with a question, with a verdict. "I don't blame her," Sophie sobbed, the words clumsy on her tongue, like she was reading from a script she didn't fully understand. And Linda believed every syllable, because believing Sophie had always been easier than facing the truth of me. My mother's finger shot out, trembling with righteous fury, and pointed straight at my face. "You're evil at this age already!" she screamed. "You'd hurt your own sister!" I didn't even get a chance to breathe, let alone defend myself. No one asked what happened. No one asked where I was standing. No one asked why Sophie's story changed mid-cry. They just scooped her up like she was made of glass and rushed her to the car, driving to the hospital like they were carrying treasure, and I got left behind. I remember curling up in the living room, small and shaking, my face pressed into my knees. I cried until my throat burned and my chest hurt and my tears turned thin, like my body was wringing itself dry. They came home late. Sophie was wearing a new dress. She hugged a pile of expensive toys so high it nearly swallowed her. She ran to me, all sunshine and victory, and held out a wrinkled piece of candy. "Big sister," she grinned, sweet as poison. "I forgive you. Don't be mad anymore." My tears came before I even understood why I was crying. It was the helplessness, the confusion, the feeling of being erased while still alive. Linda saw me crying and exploded as if my tears were disrespect. "What? Are you mute?" she snapped. "Your sister's talking to you and you can't hear her." My father pulled me into the hallway. exhausted, voice heavy like he'd been carrying this family on his back, and resented me for adding weight. "Your sister's little," he said. "She doesn't know better. Don't hold it against her. We have our faults too, but you're the older one. You need to be more forgiving." I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. Then I asked so quietly, it barely counted as a question. "So, you know I didn't push her, right?" My dad sighed. He didn't answer. He only said the line I heard my whole life. The line that trained me like a leash. "Evelyn, don't be stubborn, be good. Taking the short end of the stick won't kill you. Your parents wouldn't hurt you." And in the end, I lowered my head. I apologized. I swallowed injustice whole like it was medicine. I became the good kid, and in return I got erased. Sophie always had our parents protecting her, and if I didn't protect myself, nobody would. In my last life, I died because I was too weak. In this life, I couldn't die a second time. So when the backlash hit my company like a wave of filth, I didn't flail, I didn't plead, I didn't go online and cry for strangers' mercy. I stabilized. Some employees quit out of fear, some stopped checking in, some deactivated their social media entirely like they were trying to wash my name off their screens. I gave everyone a fully paid week off. Shut down operations for internal work, paused visits and meetings, locked the gates, and drew the curtains. And I started gathering evidence. The quieter I stayed, the harder Sophie performed. She turned her tears into a brand. She turned sympathy into followers. She accidentally began accepting sponsorships. She went live selling products with swollen eyes and trembling hands, and the sales numbers climbed like a fever. Evil sister, heartless CEO, family destroyer, those labels stuck to me like glue. And the more people hated me, the easier Sophie made money. It was almost elegant, the way she did it. A victim story polished into profit. The night I was ready to drop the receipts, Linda called. "Evelyn, I'm sorry." I hung up, didn't let her finish. I already died once because I got soft. I wasn't getting soft again. That same night, when Sophie hit her highest sales ever on livestream, when her followers spammed hearts like they were crowning a saint, I had my legal team and PR team push one statement onto the trending list. The headline was one sentence, cold and sharp enough to cut through noise. When the truth gets buried, who was really betrayed? Inside, I didn't curse. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laid out every past-army stage of my life like exhibits in a courtroom. The child left behind, the teenager forced to quit school, the young woman who worked until her hands shook, the daughter who paid the bills, signed the leases, transferred tuition, bought the house near Sophie's school, bought the car, covered the emergencies, carried the family on her back, and then got scapegoated when the family needed a villain. Attached were bank transfers, tuition payments, lease contracts with my signature, emails, witness statements, the school timeline, and proof that the fake affiliate school was not my choice, that Sophie and my parents chose it after I cut them off, and then shoved the blame onto me to protect their pride. At the end, I wrote one line. No emotion, just a seal. Parker & Co. has completed restructuring. We welcome partners back under truth, not rumours. Public opinion flipped like a storm changing direction. Sophie's staged tears became the evidence of manipulation. Her "I don't blame her" became a confession of intent. Every ugly label they'd slapped on me turned around and returned to her like a boomerang with teeth. My lawyer filed a defamation lawsuit against Sophie, demanded damages, demanded a restraining order. News accounts ran with it. Brands dropped her overnight, sponsors disappeared like smoke, and for the first time in a long time, I heard silence, not the silence of endurance, the silence of someone who finally took her voice back. Sophie was staring down a payout big enough to shatter her life. I didn't drag it out. I signed the authorization, handed everything to my lawyer, and left town to scout the market for a West Coast branch. No interviews, no teary footage, no closure clips for them to feed on. I let them search for me in an empty city. When I returned to Chicago a month later, my car barely stopped in front of the office building before I saw her, Linda, waiting in the lobby like a ghost who didn't know where else to go. She'd aged fast. Bloodshot eyes, dry tangled hair, shoulders hunched under an old coat, like even winter wind knew how to mock her now. The polished woman who used to wear motherhood like a crown was gone. All that remained was an exhausted mother standing outside the company of the daughter she'd always treated like a wallet. "Evelyn," she whispered, voice fraying. Sophie is depressed now. She's been punished enough. Can you please let her go?" I didn't raise my voice, I didn't glare, I didn't offer cruelty, I simply made every word clear. "Depression?" I asked. "Didn't she say she's had that for years? So what does that have to do with me?" Linda lowered her voice like she was kneeling with her mouth. "Withdraw the lawsuit. She'll still have a chance to start over." I didn't answer right away. I looked her straight in the eyes and finally pulled the question I'd swallowed for years out from under my tongue like a shard of glass. "Mum, did you ever love me?" Linda froze. Her lips trembled. She blinked fast, as if the question itself was an insult she didn't understand. "Of course I did," she stammered. "How could I not? What mother doesn't love her child?" I gave a dry, empty smile. "Then why did you have me and leave me in a poor town to grow up lacking everything, while you kept Sophie with you and raised her right?" I stepped closer. My voice stayed even, but each word landed like a nail. "When you said you had no money, no time, how did you still manage to have another child and take her everywhere with you? Why did you have money for a house, for a car, for a good school for her? But I had nothing." Linda lowered her eyes. No answer, only tears, drop by drop, like proof she still had feelings, like she hoped I'd soften. Then she began to explain. She said money was tight when she had me, so she left me with my grandparents. Later, when she visited, I seemed cold and distant. So she got scared, didn't know how to get close. And when she had Sophie, she poured all her love into her to make up for her guilt. As she talked, she almost smiled as if she could rock herself to sleep with a kinder version of the story. I clenched my teeth until my jaw ached. My voice went colder. "So that's your love. Abandon me, use me, force me to raise your other child. And when she and you and Dad pushed me toward my death, you called it family." Linda panicked, scrambling to deny it. "No, Evelyn, no, I didn't mean—" But the more she spoke, the more ridiculous it sounded. I stepped around her and walked into the building. I'd cried my last tear for them a long time ago. And if Sophie wanted to meet me one last time, it wouldn't be because I cared. It would be because I wanted to look straight at the end of the chain I'd worn my whole life and finally watch it break. When I couldn't afford clothes, when I didn't have enough to eat, when I had to count every dollar just to buy pads. Where was that hand then? I let the question hang, not because I wanted an answer, but because I wanted the silence to finally tell the truth. Beyond the glass, the city lights kept burning, indifferent and bright, like they'd never witnessed my life at all. "Now I don't need it anymore," I said, voice flat as winter. "And you show up with an apology like it's a discounted product." I ended the call. And this time, there was nothing left to go back to. Maybe 14-year-old Evelyn once needed her parents' help, but Evelyn now, the one who could stare down balance sheets that looked like entire lifetimes, didn't need them anymore. When I was drowning, they weren't there. Now that I was steady, they tried to return, swiping the word family like a free pass into my life. It was ridiculous. If guilt was real, the only atonement was distance. Don't call, don't come, don't drag me back into that old spiral where I had to bleed just to be acknowledged. No more Sophie, No more shadow, no more rock on my shoulders. My company stabilized faster than I expected, then surged forward like a train finally released from its brakes. Partners returned with careful smiles. Investors came back with cautious apologies. Frozen contracts thawed mid-negotiation, signed again as if rumours had been nothing but weather. And then the bell rang. Parker & Comey went public. Standing beneath the electronic board, hearing the opening bell strike like metal hitting fate, I didn't think about family dinners or forgiveness. I thought about one thing only. I pulled myself out of the bottom with my own hands. And I wasn't stopping there. I started a foundation, not for branding, not for headlines, but for kids like I used to be. Kids holding up whole families on their backs. Kids turned into machines built to endure. I wanted them to have a door I never had, because in this life, I wasn't anyone's puppet. I lived for me, and I didn't need anyone to redeem me. I already saved myself.